Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Weekly MTG, the stream that will take you inside Wizards of the Coast, deliver some news, bring stars like Mark Rosewater in here. I am Blake Rasmussen. I'm one of your hosts.
I'm Steve Sunu. I am your other host. And as Blake already mentioned, we have Mark Rosewater joining us on our inaugural episode. How's it going, Mark?
Going good. I'm excited to talk, but not yet.
Not yet.
Not just yet.
We've got a couple things before then. So on today's show, we've got a bunch of cool stuff going on. So we're going to show off the new M19 Standard Showdown lands.
And hey, you might have heard of the little thing called the Great Designer Search 3. You're going to get to hear the winner of that and a little bit about it from our good friend Mark Rosewater.
We're also going to talk about the 25th anniversary birthday Grand Prix.
And on top of that, yes, it's true. The rumors are real. We are opening a beta booster pack here on stream, so stick around.
I'm excited for that.
It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to do that beforehand, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But first, I'm going to put on some headphones because the first thing we're doing is we are introducing the new author of the Core 2019 story arc. So we've been having outside authors come on, write stories. We're introducing her for the first time, and she's joining us all the way from Hawaii via the magic of the internet. Kate Elliott is joining us. Hi, Kate.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. How are you doing?
Well, fortunately, I'm not on the island that has the volcano on it right now, although this island did have that volcano on it, but it was like a couple million years ago.
Okay, so you're probably safe.
We think so.
Okay.
So what you're saying is this island doesn't produce red mana just yet?
Well, it did.
It did.
Which actually, now that I think about it, ties in with what we're going to be talking about later.
It does a little bit. I've read your first story, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So that sound you hear, Kate, is probably the sound of thousands of Magic fans furiously Googling your name. So why don't we save them a little time? Tell us some of the stuff that you've worked on, a little bit about yourself. Who is Kate Elliott?
Okay, this is like a hard question, but I am Kate Elliott. I write fantasy, science fiction, alternate history fantasy, and young adult fantasy. Mostly novels, some short fiction. I've been writing since I was a child. And actually, the first story I remember writing was when I was like 9 or 10, and it was about a dragon. Also, perhaps, of interest later. And it grew from there. I started making up worlds. Although the first worlds I made up when I was like 10 or 11 were these long underground dungeons, underground habitats, and there was always a dungeon where one person who was really bad would have to sit with no way out. I don't know what that's about me. And there were two things that I loved as a child. One was playing outdoors, and the other one was reading. I read Lord of the Rings when I was 13, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my life and got me really into world building. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about world building later and researching real world building. And one of the reasons that I started writing was to recreate that feeling that I had when I was reading Lord of the Rings. And at that time, I had never heard of fan fiction. I didn't know anything about it. And maybe today I would be writing fan fiction in Lord of the Rings. But instead, I thought I had to make up my own worlds. So it was kind of good for me because I have file cabinets filled with things that I wrote when I was a teenager and on, just me making up stuff, drawing maps, doing all this stuff, and I loved it.
So you made maps, you wrote stories. When you were a kid, what did you do to build these worlds?
I drew a lot of maps, physical maps at that time. I think because I grew up in rural Oregon, which in some ways was a great place for me to grow up because I was an outdoor kid. I just wanted to be outdoors all the time. But it also was kind of, in some ways, really boring. So I was always imagined that I could be in some other world, and so I would draw the worlds that I wished I could go to, because when you're young and you think about having an adventure, what you thought is like, oh my gosh, it will be so amazing. I'll be trekking over the mountains and I'll be being chased by orcs or whatever, right? And then you get older and you think, well, that really wouldn't be so comfortable with it.
Was there a favorite world that you created when you were, something you kept going back to when you were a teenager or anything like that?
No, not really. The stuff I wrote when I was young, I kind of repurposed as I got older. say that when I was younger and a teen, I think understandably, I wrote a lot of wish fulfillment fantasy. It was me and my cousin and my sister and my best friend on a trek, and then we met these 3 princes, and wasn't that wonderful? And which is, to me, what teenagers are supposed to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They try to project themselves into these other situations. And then as I got older, there were pieces of those stories that I still liked, and then I built them into new stories. One of the interesting things I've written, in December of this year is my 30th anniversary of my first novel being published. It wasn't actually.
Wow.
I know. I can't believe it.
I mean,
either.
congratulations, but that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still around, man. And that is something by itself. But it was, the thing about writing for this long is that you change as an artist. So the stuff that I wrote as a teenager still speaks to me in some ways, except for the journal I wrote when I was 16, which I tried to reread when I was working on my young adult fantasy, and I could not read what I wrote when I was writing because it was so pretentious.
That sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I read
But
Blake's journal the other day. It was the same way.
Incredibly pretentious.
Yeah.
Can I have a couple lines? You don't have it with you?
Sure, we'll talk after the show. That I'm definitely not reading on air.
But you know, you can see that part of yourself. I can see that part of myself back then. But then as you get older, what you want to write about changes, and how you write about changes. And that's what's so interesting to me about having a long arc of creativity. You can look at any artist of any kind who has this long period of decades where they create, is that you can see something essential about them is the same, but other parts of them are changing. And that's why I like this idea that it isn't just the young or the old who should be creating, but people, if they can, not everybody has the opportunity, but to create across a whole lifetime, to me is a great privilege as a writer.
So,
and one that I've had, and one that I hope to continue to have. And one of the reasons that I took this project, because it was a challenge to me, it was interesting to me.
Yeah. So what? So we'll talk about this project specifically in a second. But what are some of the books and worlds that you've created in these past 30 years?
So that's a setup question.
It is. It's definitely a setup question.
Discussed beforehand. In honor of Magic: The Gathering, I am going to. So first of all, I have to say I've written 27 books so far. I'm working on 28, and I have other stories and projects in progress. I love to write in series, so like I really love the trilogy form for itself. But I also like to write. I don't write like all in one world for my entire career. Some people do that, which is cool. But I like to create different worlds, because then they can have like a different tone or a different aesthetic. So if I write one that's kind of grim and dark, then the next one can be kind of more comedic and lighter in tone. So with that understanding, sorry, I have notes I'm referring to here. I am going to briefly mention 5 of my series, which are all set in different worlds and situations, according to which dragon clan they would belong to.
That is a hint for anyone following along at home.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with my science fiction series, Jiran. So long before pitches became a thing, you know, the Hollywood pitch, such and such meets such and such, I described this series. It's science fiction, but I described it as Jane Austen meets Genghis Khan.
Okay.
In
A natural pairing.
Natural pairing, yes. So this is a very character-driven story with empire building and rebellion, politics, war, and lots of character drama, debate, discussion, and battles. So for me, Jiran is definitely a member of Ojutai's clan.
The best clan. Yep.
Obviously.
Obviously.
So that's one. Now let's go to Dramoka, who's the most orderly of the dragons, really, really likes things controlled. And I would say the Crossroads trilogy and its related novel, Black Wolves, which are their secondary world fantasy, so they're set in a world that doesn't have anything to do with this world. And the story is kind of about control and about treachery and about justice and about change. And there are eagles the size of Cessnas from which reeves who are like sheriffs, right? They dangle hang glider style to patrol the countryside. So it has giant justice eagles.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's my Jamocha story. Now I'm going to make you guys guess the next one.
Okay.
Oh boy. Okay.
Crown of Stars is my 7-volume epic fantasy. It's set in a world that's kind of a riff off 10th century Germany. It's also my literary conversation with Tolkien about the things that I loved about Lord of the Rings and the things that I didn't love about Lord of the Rings. But it's mostly about power and ruthlessness and the terrible, terrible consequences of actions.
I think I got this.
Okay.
I think I got
Blake,
this.
you want to take a crack at it?
Silumgar.
You're up? Yep. and there are brooding men in it because it's the Sultai brood.
Yep.
All right, and then I'm going to do that. You guys have to guess the next one too, but this is easy.
Okay, there's only 2 left, so our options
Yeah,
are dwindling.
50-50. It's
Yeah.
a 50-50.
So Court of Fives is my young adult fantasy, and we know that in young adult today, it's all pacing. It's got to move fast, fast, fast. So obviously, this is the Colligan book. Court of Fives, I call American Ninja Warrior meets Little Women in a setting inspired by Cleopatra's Egypt.
Sure.
Yeah, it makes
That all
total sense.
that all
yeah.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So that, of course, leaves us with the Tarka. She's a bit savage, and she's really, really passionate about eating.
Yeah.
And if she read, which frankly I
Probably
can't,
not.
she's too interested in eating, and it would take time away from eating. She would definitely love Cold Magic, which is the first book of the Spirit Walker trilogy. And it's so my pitch for this takes me years to come up with these things. It's Afro-Celtic, post-Roman, Ice Age adventure set in an alternate 19th century fantasy world with Phoenician spies, revolution, and lawyer dinosaurs.
Honestly, I would read an entire book of just these pitches.
Yeah, like lawyer dinosaurs.
Lawyer dinosaurs.
Sign me
Sold.
up. That sounds
Done.
great.
So, but the reason, so the heroine narrates her own story. It's told in the first person, and her name is Catherine Bearhall, or Kat. She's funny. She's a little savage beneath it all for reasons that are important to the plot, which I can't tell you because they would be spoilers. But
Sure.
most importantly, she loves to eat. And she eats a lot during the course of the 3 books. So, yeah. So, and what I'm working on now is gender-bent Alexander the Great as space opera.
Sure.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Very cool.
That's coming out next year from 4 books.
Okay.
There you have it.
Thank you. And that's
It's nice
only,
to have
that's
the
only
context too. Yeah.
So obviously you talked a lot about Tarkir. So that plays a little bit into the core 2019 story, obviously. What, without giving too much away, what can you tell us about the core 2019 story, which, by the way, for anyone following along at home again, starts next Wednesday?
So, I had to, since Blake and I had this long discussion last week about what I could say and what I couldn't. And I'm not going to hold up the page which says what I couldn't say, because then obviously that would...
Just a bunch of stuff scratched out.
Yes. Well, no, it's all there in big caps so that I don't forget.
We just have to cut the feed, and then we'd have to cut the interview short if that happened.
Some things I'm so excited about that are in this story, but I can't talk about them. Okay. So now I'm reading from this.
Yep.
Portions of the story take place on Tarkir, which I'm interested in those dragons. Yasova Dragonclaw has a role in the story. The Elder Dragons play a part in the story.
They're not on Tarkir.
No, they're not. Gasp!
Okay.
That's so. The story has some backstory or ancient lore. Do we call it that?
Yeah, we definitely call it.
Focuses on Nicole Bolas and Ugin. It's at the origin of their conflict.
I've heard of those two, and I've heard that they don't necessarily get along.
They do
so
not get along.
I'm interested in hearing about how that all started.
Yeah, so I've read the first chapter. Actually, I've read the first 4 chapters of the story. And yeah, there's some revelations in there that people are going to not see coming, I would say. There's a lot of exciting moments that are going to tie a lot of things together. Yeah, people are going to want to tune in for these for sure.
Can I add something just a little bit? When I first was approached about whether or not
Yeah.
about this whole thing, I have 3 kids.
Mhm.
They're grown now. They're no longer at home, but they all played Magic when they were kids, and
Cool.
I played Magic. I can't say I played it a lot, but I learned so I could play it with them because they
Yeah.
were so into it for as teenagers especially. I think they still all have their decks.
Ooh.
But so
Should talk to them about that.
I talked with Nick Thellman, my editor at Wizards of the Coast, and then I kind of went to them and I said, "Do you guys think I should do this?" And they're like, "Well, who or what would it be about?" And I said, "Well, I mean, the story would focus on Nicole Bolas, and my daughter said, 'You have to write it.'"
That's how you know.
The
That's
proper
the
response.
mark of a true fan.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yep.
a definite fan. So, besides playing with your children when they were younger, how did you prepare to dive into this? Because obviously, Nicol Bolas is very well known to our fans. People have strong feelings about him one way or another. Same thing with Ugin, and then there's a lot of lore on Tarkir that's very confusing due to time travel. So how did you prep to write these stories?
So, as I have said before, I love world building. And because I love world building, and I'm not going to drag them out, but I have like notebooks full of stuff and journals where I put stuff in. And I mean, literally, I have notebooks full of stuff where I have said like the price of rice. So I can know how much, I don't have to think about it each time. I can just look it up, and calendars and the phases of the moon and where the stars are going to, I mean, just everything.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I take world building really seriously. And I knew that when I was coming into this multiverse, that I knew also that the people who play Magic take it very seriously. So
like your children.
Like my children, that meant to me that I had to really do my work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up doing was I started with just kind of the surface level, because I didn't remember that much from playing it. So I started with kind of the surface level. I looked up the Magic Wiki, and I just kind of read the outlines of things to try to get familiar with the Magic system, the colors, the main planes. And then, because I knew what the story was, and then Nick and I had a lot of discussions about how we were going to structure the story, which I'm not going to discuss here because you get to read it.
Spoiler alert, yep.
And as we focused on that, of course, somebody's ignore my phone in the background. I'm so sorry. As we discussed that, and I focused in on using Tarkir as part of the plot, and of course, Bolas and Ugin, then I began to delve into the fiction that's been read, been written about it, and then of course people have written. So I just want to show.
Oh, we're going to get to see an artifact. This is cool.
I printed out, because I read better. I printed out. This is double-sided. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Wow.
This isn't even all my research, but this was the stuff I printed out. I read it, I highlighted it, I reread it. I used it to reference things. And then I also talked to people, like I talked to Alison Lurs, who just was so knowledgeable. And this is something that was interesting to me, because when I make up one of my own worlds, obviously it's kind of like sedimentary layers layering up in my head over time, from my first conception of it to, after when I've finished a whole trilogy, I have like all this stuff in my head about the world. So if you were to ask me, maybe I wouldn't know every detail of the world building, and I might have to reference it. But in general, if you were to ask me about the world, I could answer any question.
Right.
So for me, as I read and read and read, I had a couple of questions for Alison, and she didn't need to look anything up. She knew it, man.
Right off the top of her head, yep.
She would go, oh, whatever, because the people who work there and have been building the world of Magic for the players all this time they just really know their stuff, and it's exciting to see how many things mesh together. And again, it's like this huge landscape, and I was just in one tiny corner of it. And it was so much fun and very challenging because I couldn't just make arbitrary decisions. I had to really get to know the corner I was writing in well enough that I could not say, oh, I want to do this, and then realize later that I had done something that went against what always going on. So I had a lot of interchanges with Nick, where I said, can I do this? And then he would say yes or no, or he would say, oh, I need to check with somebody.
Yeah.
Then he'd check with somebody and get back to me. So it was fun. It was challenging, and it was good for me to kind of get a window into another set of world building, because I've always before this just worked in my own worlds.
Okay, so this was the first project you had done where you used someone else's world.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Was that a little disorienting or?
No.
Okay.
I
She's like, no, I got this.
No, this is fine. Like, yeah, I'm a pro. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah, I get how it works, and also because it's clear to me that Magic's world has kind of done that sedimentary. It's built up, so whatever was placed at the base at the beginning, and then things get added, and then something comes in that's kind of like a lava flow to get back to that volcano that kind of interrupts it, and then it changes, and it's basically similar to how I world build.
Okay.
So it felt like a familiar space to me. And the other thing I want to say about Magic, because about the multiverse, is that it also provides all these different planes that have different tones and different aesthetics, and that's very appealing to me.
Yeah.
So,
Now, getting back to Tarkir, what, without going too far into details, because again, story starts next week, who is your favorite character to write?
Ooh, that's a good question. I want to know that too.
well, come on. We all know that Bolas was my favorite character.
Bolas is everyone's favorite character to write.
Besides him, because we all know it would have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
But besides him, I did find a way to put Yasova in, because I liked her. And the funniest thing about her was, because I'm very talkative, so I would write her dialogue, and she would be like, I suppose, and think, and it would go on, and then I would look at it, and then I would cut 10 words to 2 words, right?
Yeah.
I suppose, I think we should go over here and do this, and then I would say, oh, what she says is, go there.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't mess around.
No, she does not mess around. All right, well, thank you very much, Kate. I hope everyone loved meeting you. Before we go, I had one question. I saw that you were into medieval sword fighting.
Yes, it was a while ago.
It was a while ago, okay.
A while ago. I paddle outrigger canoes now, but yes, I met my husband in a sword fight.
Like
Literally.
in a sword fight, like you guys were crossing swords, and then
Yes, literally. I mean, the Society for Creative Anachronism is the thing where people pretend to recreate the Middle Ages or whatever, right? And some people are really into calligraphy or art or costuming or whatever. Me, I was just what they would call the stick jock. So you have these rattan swords and armor, like 40 to 50 pounds of armor, and helmets, obviously padded helmets, and then you go out and you hit people, right? That's me. So yeah, we literally met in a sword fight.
That's amazing.
That's so cool.
That's cool.
That is the best story to tell at a wedding ever. Well, thank you, Kate. We're looking forward to reading the story, which again publishes for the first time next Wednesday. Those go up at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So thank you for joining us, Kate.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll see you on the internet.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks.
All right, and now I can hear normally again.
Okay.
All right, so before we get to the Great Designer Search, which I know a lot of you are here to meet the winner.
Yeah.
I know I'm excited to see who the winner is.
We know Mark is excited.
Yeah, oh, for
I'm
sure.
always excited.
Yeah, this is
First, we want to give you a little sneak peek at something coming with Core 2019, the Standard Showdown Basic Lands.
Ooh, yeah, we're doing something a little new with those, aren't we?
Well, we have a new artist. She's actually relatively new to doing magic work. Her first magic piece came out last year or the year before. Alayna Danner, friend of the show,
Sure.
did 5 amazing pieces. So we're going to take a look at those 5 lands. That is obviously the plains. We're doing these in Wooburg order, as everything should be done. But there's the plains, and then coming up next is my favorite, obviously, the island.
Nice.
which
Very cool.
looks amazing. And then next up is the Swamp. And I should add that Alayna is actually going to be on this very show in 3 weeks. Is that right? Yep, June 28th. Alayna is going to join the show. She's going to talk about her process. She's going to have some process pictures. She'll walk through some of her sketches, both for these amazing lands as well as some of her previous Magic work.
God, that forest is great. The mountain and forest both. But before the show, somebody was commenting that looks a lot like the Pacific Northwest.
Pacific Northwest, yeah.
Yeah, which is very, very cool.
It's like look out my window. Yep, there's
Yeah,
that
I'm not
forest.
sure we've seen something like that before on a forest
No,
before.
and
so.
Alayna is a native to the Pacific Northwest, so that might be where that came from. We will ask her in 3 weeks.
We should write that down. Write down that
write
question.
that down.
Yeah.
Ask Alayna.
Yeah.
Got it.
There we go. We did
All
it.
right.
We did it.
So next up, what
Yeah.
Mark's been waiting for.
I've been waiting patiently.
GS3.
I don't normally
GS3.
not say anything for long periods of time. That's not my MO.
Well, it's been really
it's
cool.
definitely not.
I know coming from the outside, not being involved in the Great Designer Search process, just seeing it from the outside as just a fan. This is the third time we've done Great Designer Search. It's the third time. Maybe talk a little bit about how the process for doing this has evolved since we started it in, 2006, right?
Yeah, 2006
Something like
was the
that?
first
Yeah.
one. Yeah. So what happened was, my boss at the time, Randy Bueller, some people might know he's in Pro Tour Hall of Fame. He was my boss, and he said that he had money for an internship for design. And my problem was the developers at the time would go look at the Pro Tour, and that's how they would find people. But I didn't know where to look to find designers. It's not something. It's not quite the skill set that there was an easy place to look. And so I was at home with my wife, and we were watching, I don't know, some reality show, and it just hit me. So I came in and I said to Randy, do you care how I find this person? And he goes, well, what do you have in mind exactly? And I go, I want to do a show. It's kind of like a reality show, but it'll be, because there's a lot of things like Project Runway where like, we get people that have a skill, we test the skill, we cut them, and in the end, somebody wins, and then usually they get a job out of it, right? And so the idea was, what if to fill this internship, we did this thing called the Great Designer Search. And Randy was game, he said okay, and we sort of built it from scratch. And we went out and we said, okay, anybody who's interested, I mean, there's certain parameters.
Sure.
But if you fit the parameters, anybody who wants can apply. I think we had a little over 1,000 people apply the first time. And we ran it, and it took place, the very first time we did it, we actually had 15 finalists.
Right.
And it was run, it was similar, there were 3 trials to get in, just like now, pretty similar to the current one. And we had 5 design challenges, but it was 5 weeks in a row. So like they would do it, they would turn in, we'd rush to get it up, they would do it, we'd rush to get it up, and it went 5 weeks in a row. And because there were 15 people, I think we got rid of 3 people, then 3 people, then 2 people, then 2 people, then 2 people, until the final 3. And the original final 3 was Alexis Jansen, Ken Nagel, and Graham Hopkins.
Those names all sound
those are all
Those are
familiar.
very familiar names.
And so anyway, we ran it. Alexis ended up winning. But Alexis and Ken and Graham and Mark Globus and Noah Weil. So a bunch of different people all ended up getting internships or jobs, many of which still work here today.
Yeah.
And so we did it, and it was a lot of fun. It was very exciting, but it was a huge amount of work.
Yep.
That's so weird. That doesn't sound like a lot of work at all
nothing
from
has
how
changed.
you've laid it
It
out.
was a lot of work.
Absolutely
So-
nothing has changed.
Yeah.
So my joke at the time, and whenever people ask when the next one's going to happen, I go, I have to forget how much work the previous one was. So about 6 years later,
Right.
we said, okay, let's do the Great Designer Search 2.
Had you actually forgotten how much work it was?
I kind of had, yeah. With time, it fades. And so what happened was we did it again. It was a little bit different the second time. We had a wiki component where this time the people were building a singular world, and then the challenges each built within that same world. And then the audience, through this wiki, got to participate. So it was a little bit of different, but a lot of the same processes. There were 3 trials to get in. Now, we had a top 8, so we only did 8 this time, not 15 like the first one. And then we did 5 challenges. Each week we'd knock somebody out, and they were every other week rather than all in a row, because that was kind of crazy. And then we had a top 3. Ethan Fleischer, Sean Main, and Scott Venice. And
Those
Again,
names also sound
very
familiar.
very familiar names in these
Right.
top 3s that you bring
So
up.
all 3 of them would go on to work at Wizards. 2 of the 3 still work here. And anyway, so once again, a very successful contest. So a couple years ago, we decided to do the third one. We said, let's do a third one. And a whole bunch of different reasons. We had some grandiose ideas that were a little big for our britches, and it took us a while to finally figure out how to do them.
I was in those early meetings.
Yeah.
They were definitely, they would have been really
Yeah.
cool.
They would have been cool.
Don't
They
tell
were-
anybody because maybe we could still do them someday.
Maybe.
All I know is I would say here's what we wanted to do, and like Blake's eyes would go, I don't know if we can do that.
That's just his face, man.
Yeah.
But eventually we said, okay,
true.
let's go back to basics. Let's do what we want to do. So we put out last December. We announced we were doing the 3rd Great Designer Search, and what we said is, if you're interested, contact us. And then everybody who contacted us, we would send out the initial trial. So 8,000 people told us they were interested.
Down slightly up from 1,000.
Yeah, just
at
a
the
little
first.
bit.
1,000 is how many turned in
hold
first
on,
time.
hold on a
So,
second though.
Yeah.
Had you forgotten between 2 and 3 how much work 2 was?
Oh, of course, I always forget. I do a lot of other things I forget.
Yeah.
So anyway, we decided we put out the trial. So 8,000 people said they were interested, but the first trial is you have to answer 10 essay questions, each which are 300 words.
Right.
So it's 3,000 words worth of questions. So that'll weed it down some, right? Because that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So 3,000 people turned in the first trial.
That's so many people.
That's a lot.
so many words.
Like we had thought that about 1,500 people would take the multiple choice test, which is the second trial. It was double that.
Yeah.
So, and we'd added 25 questions, anticipating we'd go up to 1,500.
Right.
So what happens is that this one had 75 questions. The very first, we had 35 questions on the very first GDS. We had 50 questions on the second GDS. This time we did 75 questions, and I went out and got R&D. I didn't write all the questions this time. In the previous ones, I'd written most of them. So R&D, all bunch of different R&D people handed stuff in. We had questions on all sorts of different topics. 75 questions. And my thought was you'd have to get like maybe 70 right to advance, because previously you could miss 5 or 6. 73 was the cutoff. You had to get 73 right on 75.
I took that test. I could not. Get
yeah,
that high.
I did the same thing, and there's no way I would have gotten.
That's why I work on the 4th floor and
yeah,
not the
we
3rd
don't.
floor.
That's why we don't work in R&D.
So 97 people got to 73 or better. So that was the 3rd trial. So the 3rd trial was a design test. We gave them 10 cards to design with a whole bunch of parameters, and they had to turn that in. And then I sat down on the couch in R&D one day. I went through all 97 tests, 10 cards each, so 970 cards.
Jesus.
I had to read a whole bunch of essays. I had to do a lot of grading. And in the end, what I did is I narrowed it down to 15 people. And then I brought all the judges in. So we had a bunch of judges for this. Eric Lauer, who runs set design. Melissa DeToro, who represented play design. We had Eli Schifrin, who was doing the rules management. And I was representing vision design, obviously. So that was our regular judges. And then we had a guest judge every single week. So during the course of it, we brought in Alexis Jansen, who won the very first. We had brought in Ethan, who won the second one. We had Aaron Forsyth, who's my boss. We brought in Jules Robbins. We brought in Ken Nagel from the very first Great Designer Search. And Jenna Helen for the art search, because she works on the creative team. Yep. And so we ran this over the course of many, many weeks. We ended up actually showing it to the audience over a much more condensed schedule.
Yes.
Which was not quite the original plan, but in the
So
end, it
how
ended
things
up
worked
being,
out.
yeah, how
Yep.
things worked out. So if you've been watching for the last 3 weeks, we've done all the different things. You could see the design test was judged, and then each design challenge, we put it out there. So the first one was a tribal challenge, where they had to pick a tribe that nobody else picked. The second challenge was a top-down challenge, where we made Bigtopia, which was a circus world, and they had to do circus tropes. Because the creative team won't let me do Circus World, so I had to put it somewhere.
We know we're not going to
Something
use
that we
this.
knew we were not going to use. Yeah.
So the 3rd week was Mechanic Week. They had to design their own new mechanic. The 4th week was Constraints, where they had to take art and they had to design to constraints and to preset art. I gave them 12 pieces. They had to use 10 pieces. And then the 5th one was they could pick any expansion, and they had to make a brand new booster pack of new cards, but that would fit into that expansion. And each week, we started with 8 people, and each week we do a challenge, and we knock somebody out until we got down to 3 people. So the 3 finalists were Ari Nia, Chris Mooney, and Jeremy Geis.
Man.
And those were the 3 people that earlier this week came to Wizards, and we had a full day.
Yeah, no kidding.
So we started by giving them a tour, and for those that don't know, Wizards, we never have given public tours. For a while, we used to give private tours, and like 2 years ago, they stopped it.
Yep.
No more
Yeah,
private tours.
we don't give tours anymore.
And so we got like special permission to give a private tour. And I can't really talk much about it because that's why we can't.
It's
people
why
do
it's
it.
that's
But,
why it's a private tour.
it was a private tour.
Yeah.
They really had a good time. So we showed them around, and then we did the gauntlet. So it was a 3-hour thing. We had 3 different rooms, each with had 4 people in it.
One with Phyrexian writing on the wall.
Yep.
Well, that's later.
Okay.
And so what happened was for 1 hour they would sit down each in a different room, and we would talk with them for an hour, and then they would rotate rooms. So they talked to each group, and we ran through 3 hours of just sitting and talking and all sorts of questions and like, what do you think about this and that? And we talked magic and all sorts of stuff. And then all of that was graded. All 12 people who were asking questions did grading, and then at the end of that, we graded it. The highest marks went to Chris. Chris Mooney did the best in the gauntlet. Ari came in second, and Jeremy came in third. But they all did really, really well. I mean, I'm talking about the ranking,
like
but they all did really well. Everybody was very, very impressed with them. In fact, I got pulled aside by many different people that just told me how much they were impressed by different people they had met, and they did a great job. So then we did, on Tuesdays in R&D, we do something called Magic for Lunch, where we bring in food, and then we play the latest sets. So I think we brought in Greek food, and we played Dominaria, and so they got a chance to play against R&D. I think they had a losing record against R&D, but they had fun.
They're the new people.
Well, also, their attention was not probably in the game. Right. They were a little nervous. But anyway, we played for lunch, and then after that was the final challenge. And so the way it worked was, and this is similar to how we did both the first two, is we go back in time. This time we went to Dark Ascension. And we said, okay, at the last minute, right before we're going to hand over the file, development comes and says, Seance is broken. We cannot print Seance. It is utterly broken.
If only they had done that. Unleashing Seance upon the world.
And then the brand team said, well, if you're going to change the card, the name's always, but we'd rather not call it Seance. Let's change the name. So what we said to them is, okay, here's your challenge. It's got to be a white rare. It's got to use the art, because that's what the art is. And it's got to have a collector number that matches. So it has to be in between Sanctuary Cat and Silver Claw Griffin. And so I gave them a dictionary. I gave them a copy of the file of Dark Ascension.
Yeah.
I gave them a notebook and a pen. And we put them in these little glass cubes. That's what you're talking about. These little glass cubes. And they had an hour.
Wow.
Now, most of the challenges from before, I'd give it to them on Thursday afternoon, and they had until Sunday night. So they had like 3.5 days.
Yeah.
But this was like none of that. You have 1 hour. They had to make 3 cards with 3 different mechanics and 3 different names. And then, at the second hour, we brought it in with all the judges, and then we treated it like, okay, let's figure out which card we're going to do. Now, I've just today, I finished the article. We'll go up hopefully next week. I run through all the final challenge, all their cards, all the things the judges decided. You'll see all of that. In the end, when the dust settled, they all did really, really well. Jeremy just did a little bit better than Ari, which did a little bit better than Chris. But it went really well. And so we then had to figure out what to do. So now remember, we had a design test. We had 5 individual challenges. We had the gauntlet, and we had the final challenge. So we had to take all that information, and we had to figure out who the winner would be. And it was really hard, because like I said, they are all truly great designers. In fact, all 8 of them I thought were amazing designers. I was really, really happy. But the audience doesn't understand is, what I was asking them to do was crazy, crazy hard. Because this is what I do. Like, I know this. It's kind of like if you watch Project Runway, we're like, okay, we're going to go to a hardware store, and you're going to be able to dress out of things from a hardware store. And you're like, that's not what normal people do.
In the real world, you don't have an hour to fill a hole. You have, a day or a week or something like that.
It's a highly condensed.
Yes, it's highly condensed, and I thought they did an amazing job, and I thought the final day went really well. But in the end, there can be only one.
There can be only one.
Great designer.
And I've heard that we have that one.
We do. We picked our winner.
And I've heard you have some sort of segment or clip for us that you have that reveals that.
I would like to introduce the winner. So we had to roll the tape and finally meet.
Oh, all right.
The third great designer.
Woo! All right.
So after many months, we've finally come to the end of the Great Designer Search 3. So I'm happy to announce the winner, Alayna. So how does it feel, Ari?
It feels amazing, Mark. I'm so happy to be at the finish line after all the time working on these really intense, challenging card designs.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a musician and teacher from Boston, and I started playing Magic back in Fallen Empires. My favorite commander is Cedrus the Traitor King, and I got into custom card design in the second Great Designer Search when I was a community designer, and after that, some friends and I founded Goblin Artisans, a blog for working on custom card designs.
So you've been doing custom card designs for a long time.
Yes, about 7 years.
So I just want to say, so what was your favorite challenge of all the challenges you did?
I would say the fourth challenge, where we had to match 12 pieces of artwork to 10 specified card designs and find card designs that would somehow connect the given slot to the artwork.
And in the whole contest, what was your favorite card you designed?
It was probably Mugai Creation Saga, which was that blue-green sorcery that it made bears equal to the number of cards in your hand, and then you drew cards equal to the number of creatures you had, but you could do those two things in either order.
Yeah, that was a really cool card. So anyway, I want to congratulate you on winning this contest, and I can't wait to see what you design.
Thank you, Mark.
That was awesome. That's
Yes.
so cool. So Ari's the big
Ari's
winner.
the
Congratulations,
winner.
Ari.
So here's what happened. Let me explain a little bit. So Ari came into the final day just a little bit ahead. He is the only one to have won 2 challenges, and he had placed in the top 3 of all but one of the challenges. Although, to be fair, Jeremy also had placed in the top 3 of all but one of the challenges.
Yeah.
But anyway, he came in a little bit in the lead, and what happened during the course of the day is Jeremy, who was kind of in second, didn't quite catch up to Ari. It was very close. In the end, we had a long conversation. Like I said, they were all great designers, but Ari did the best. So Ari's the winner, and I'm really excited to see what Ari does. So.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations, Ari. And if you want to see the whole recap behind the Great Designer Search 3, you can visit the Magic website, magic.wizards.com/GDS3, to see all the challenges, all the results, all the commentary from the judges. You can follow the whole thing as it unfolded. It's a really great thing.
And the final episode will go up next week when I recap the finals and I go in depth on all like the cards they made and all that. We'll go more in depth on it. So
if you want to catch up, definitely head to that hyperlink that you see on the stream right there, and then you'll get to see the final piece of the puzzle next week when Mark comes back.
So the next thing we have coming up is actually Mark is heading to Grand Prix Vegas.
Yeah, I am.
Not this weekend, but the following weekend.
I've heard of that.
Yes,
I've heard of it.
I've not been. By the way, I've not yet been to a Grand Prix Vegas. I've heard awesome things.
They're
about
amazing. I've been to everyone so far, usually doing coverage, and they're massive, and it's just a whole different scale for a Grand Prix. Grand Prix are big as it is, and this is
honestly amazing how much of like a celebratory feel you find at GP Vegas. It's just so cool to see everybody there interacting and like doing all the different things that you can do with Magic.
Yep.
It just sort of emphasizes how great a game this is and how many different people play it, and in so many different ways.
Which is fitting because this is one of our birthday Grand Prix. So we actually have 6 birthday events, 5 of which are Grand Prix and 1 of which is Gen Con. So we can put those up on the screen and look at the dates. As you can see, Grand Prix Las Vegas is June 14th to 17th, so that's not this weekend, but next weekend, so there's still time to get a flight, get some friends in a car or whatever, and get there.
Place that you can't go in a car, though, if you're in the United States, is the next one, GP Singapore.
Not many people can go there by car.
Not many people can. June 22nd through 24th is where you'll find GP Singapore.
Yep. And then we have GP Barcelona, June 29th to July 1st, followed by GP Sao Paulo, July 6th to 8th.
GP Chiba is going to be after that, July 20 through 22nd, be out in Chiba.
And then finally we end with Gen Con, the weekend of August 2nd through 5th. So again, that's not a Grand Prix, but we are still doing a lot of the birthday celebration events there, including, now, so Grand Prix Vegas is a little bit special.
Why is it special, Blake?
Because it's in Las Vegas.
Oh, well.
Also, because we are doing a beta Rochester draft.
We are doing a beta Rochester
draft. We're doing
draft.
a beta Rochester draft. At the other events, it's unlimited.
Okay.
But we're doing beta at Las Vegas. There are a number of ways to qualify for that. To find out more about that event, you can go to cfbevents.com, which has all the information about all of our Grand Prix.
Yes.
And to celebrate, Steve, what are we going to do?
Well, we've gotten something that's kind of cool. We have a original booster pack of beta that we're going to get to open here on stream for you, and you're going to get to see. This is actually very exciting for me too, because I've never actually
This is
opened.
the closest I've been into the presence of a beta
Yeah,
booster.
I've never.
Mark's like,
Mark's like, oh,
beta
like,
nothing. I've opened a box of the beta.
When did you start playing?
I started playing in alpha.
Did you? Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Just all the way at the beginning.
Very, very beginning. I started in August of 1993.
Oh, wow.
So this for you is going to be like,
is
why is it not alpha?
What happened was when I first saw Magic, I ended up buying a starter and 3 boosters because like $20 that we got the game. And then right away I'm like, oh, I want more. And then it was sold out.
Yep.
So when beta came out, I bought 2 boxes of boosters and 2 boxes of starters because I knew that if I wanted other people to get into it, they wouldn't be able to go buy it.
Right.
So anyway, and then I ended up opening a lot of it myself. But so I've opened a lot of beta boosters.
Well, okay, this will be at least unique for Steve and I.
Yeah,
and
this is
a lot
very
of our
unique for
viewers,
us.
I haven't opened them in a long
hopefully.
time. It's been a long time.
But it's great that you're here because
Yes.
I'm sure you have a lot of stories about a lot of these
I
cards.
do. I have
So-
many stories.
So we'll have to see what we can do, what kind of stories we can tell today.
Oh, no, but first, we've been here for 45 minutes. Are you guys hungry? Do
Oh,
you
I'm
want some
starving.
snacks before
Yeah.
we open
Oh,
this
sure.
beta booster? We've got
some cheesy
cheesy poop
puffs?
things.
Yeah.
We've got these are really dusty, but
Oh,
they're
man,
delicious.
yeah,
They've got nacho. No.
You know what? I had a big lunch.
You
I
had a big
think
lunch,
I think I'm
Mark?
okay.
No.
Okay, well, not give them heart attacks.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we bring out the beta booster?
All right.
Oh.
We had considered writing theme music for this. I'm
We
pretty
did.
sure, but
we
we
couldn't
ended up
come up with
not
anything
doing-
we all liked.
So let's go ahead and put it right here,
got
and
our-
we'll switch to the top-down camera for the unveiling of the beta booster. Here we go.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, here we go, and oh, that effect was not nearly as big as I wanted it to be. I thought it'd be bigger.
Yeah.
We need to
thought it'd be
light it from
bigger.
underneath and have the light stream out.
Anyway, here
Okay.
we have the beta booster pack. It is a
Doing
real
this.
beta booster pack. So
It
we'll
is?
we'll put
It
this
is.
large prop away.
We're going to go through this card by card. And also, by the way, what you're looking at here, this is the playmat that you can get at the birthday Grand Prix. This is actually, it's shiny because it is foil. So this is the Black Lotus right in there, yeah. And then it mentions all the birthday Grand Prix. So this is going to be available for purchase at the Grand Prix, but it is really cool. All
It's
right.
really awesome.
Okay, this it says visit the shores of imagination. I've never actually looked at this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, visit the shores of imagination. That's what
Magic
we're-
the Gathering booster pack.
That's what we're doing.
A
Oh my
Richard
gosh.
Garfield game.
A Richard
A
Garfield
Richard
game.
Garfield game.
Oh my god!
man.
All right, I'm opening this.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
happening. All right.
So we're just going to go through them one by one. We're going to talk a little bit about
I don't know
them.
what side to go from.
Well,
but we're
well,
gonna.
They were not all laid out the same way, so there's not a unified place that the things show up.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll go through it, and things will come up as they
Yeah.
come up.
Yep.
All right.
All right. So our first card is Dwarven Warriors.
Dwarviers.
Dwarven Warriors.
Okay.
We have these wonderful little card easels
So
here. That you
one of
can
the
get a
things that
closer
Richard
look.
was really inspired by Tolkien. We talked about how our author loves Tolkien, but Richard, a big fan of Tolkien, and one of the things that he was trying to do is capture a lot of common tropes. Well, one of the things about dwarves is they dig tunnels. That is the flavor of this card. The reason that he can allow little things through is he's digging tunnels, and only little things can fit through the tunnels.
That makes sense.
That is the flavor of Dwarven Warriors.
Build a bigger tunnel, man.
Yeah.
All right, so the next card that we have, so the original Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, they all had a cycle of cards that are called boons.
Yes, I
Yes.
remember the boons.
So
Some boons, some would say, are have better
some boons
gameplay
are
Okay.
than others.
Slightly better than others.
we have a boon coming.
We have a boon coming. And I'm afraid I'm trolling people a little bit because it is what was pretty universally known as the worst of the boon cycle, Healing Salve.
Healing salve. Yep.
So here's the next question. Healing Salve eventually got pulled. Why did it get pulled?
I actually don't know the answer.
Why
to
did we
that.
stop putting it in the basic set?
Why did we stop putting in the basic set, Mark?
Not because of power level. That wasn't the problem.
Was it damage prevention?
It was no. It's modal, and it tended to confuse people because it both prevents damage or you can gain life.
Right.
And those two modes tended to confuse beginners, and nobody else was playing the card, so we ended up taking. That's why Healing Salve went. Just the modal stuff was confusing
Okay.
people.
But that's a thing that we could do now. We do a lot of modal cards now.
no, I mean those two modes just tended to confuse people.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean,
Interesting.
we also don't do a lot of damage prevention. Early Magic did a lot of damage prevention. We've really sort of pulled back on damage prevention.
Yep.
It's not something we do as much anymore.
Sure.
So we do a lot of life gain. But
Okay.
Well, we could do the life gain version of this.
So now we have one of the earliest X spells, even though it doesn't have X in its casting
ooh,
cost.
what is it, guys? Dun, dun, dun.
Chat, if you should guess.
You got
before we-
about 2 seconds because it is Drain Life.
Oh,
Yep.
this has really cool art.
Drain Life was actually one of my favorite early cards because I didn't understand that, sinking all that mana was a real cost. I just saw, man, I can put all this mana into it and I gain life.
Yeah. Yeah.
They got it.
They
did.
got it?
They-
Okay, good job. Good job, Chad.
Good job, chat. Well done. Well done. Just immediately drain life.
Drain Life.
But yeah, this was always a really cool card. I remember I didn't start nearly as early as Alpha or Beta, but by the time I got there, this card had been reprinted a few times. And I, like you, Blake, I was just like, oh, what? I get to gain a bunch of. This is so great.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
It's like better than Fireball.
Yeah.
It's also one of the precursors that put direct damage in black. Like really, we don't do direct damage in black, but people like the drain effect so much. They're like, okay, well we'll do drain effects in black. So that's kind of the direct damage black gets to do. So
the origins of direct damage in black.
Yeah, it started at the very
so
beginning.
great.
The next card is an enchantment that grants an ability that we no longer do.
Ooh.
And it is well named. I should say that.
Oh, I know.
The ability was evergreen for quite a while.
For a long time.
Yeah. Until like, yeah.
And in fact, it is one of a few cards that is an evergreen mechanic that is the name of the card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that is Regeneration.
Regeneration. There we go. Check that out.
So one of the cool things about the artist on this card is Quentin Hoover. So one of the unique things about, especially early Quentin Hoover, is he worked in a medium that I don't know if anybody else worked in.
What was that?
Colored pencils.
Huh. Really? So is this a colored pencil piece?
I think his early stuff is colored pencil.
It kind of looks like it, actually.
Yeah, he loved colored pencils and a lot of his early stuff. Like Quentin Hoover's early work looks really different from a lot of other people, and that's because he liked working in colored pencil.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
Interesting. All right, well, our next one is not by Quentin Hoover. The next art is by Brian Snoddy. Snoddy?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's in the best color. Spell Blast.
Ah, Spell Blast. This is an X spell. This is an X spell
with actual
X common, by the way.
Yes.
And remember we later were switched out. Maybe common should be where the X spell is.
Yeah. It's a little confusing. But Spell Blast, great card. The next one is also a mechanic.
Okay.
That is not named on a card.
Oh, sure. It's a nickname.
It's a nickname.
Yeah.
Because of this
card.
Yeah, because of this card and the type of creatures it comes from. It is fire breathing.
Ah, fire breathing. I love looking at some of the wording on these old cards. We went past Spell Blast really quick, but target spell is countered. X is the cost of target spell.
Yeah.
It's the way that we've sort of changed up and homogenized some of the wording, I think, has been really great for the game.
And this one just says +1/+0.
Yeah.
Early templating, by the way, one of the things you'll notice if we're looking at beta is it wasn't until 6th edition that really we consolidated a lot of the templating. So one of the things about early Magic is you'll have two cards that do basically the same thing, and they won't necessarily be written the same way.
Right.
So it's interesting. That's one of the fun things to look at beta cards. You get to see old templates.
It's fun. I like it.
All right. Next up, so as you can these days, back in Alpha and Beta, you could get basic lands in the pack. So we do have a basic land.
But let me say real quick, this is important. Now we have a slot for basic land. Right
Yes.
now, there's one basic land per pack and you know where it is. The way it worked in Beta, Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited is there are basic lands on all 3 sheets.
Okay.
And so you could get basic lands in different spots, and so you didn't necessarily know where you were going to get them. As we hopefully may see later on.
We'll see.
We'll see. Well, first up, we have
I've always loved this
Plains.
one. I've always loved this Plains. I think it's really awesome.
So
it's like the quintessential Plains.
Okay, so here's a trivia question for you. Looking at this card, what would later change in Magic that appears on this card?
Oh, I know the answer.
Yeah, I know the answer. I'm sure Chat knows the answer.
Chat knows all.
Give him a couple seconds.
The white mana symbol would change as of Ice Age.
Yes.
So this has the old white mana symbol on it. So.
Speaking of basic lands, we're still going. The best land.
The Island.
The Island.
Yes, indeed.
And you know what? We'll just stay on the same theme because we opened 3 of these in a row. We got a mountain as well.
Yeah. Well.
So yes, you can open multiple.
Yes, it is possible
in a beta pack.
Well, the thing is, at the time, they were required to play the game. Like there wasn't.
Remember,
really...
originally Magic was sold in both starter decks and booster packs.
So you
starter decks came with a locked number of basic lands.
Right.
So the idea wasn't that you were supposed to get them from your. I mean, they were in the booster packs, but really you were supposed to get them from the starter deck.
Yep.
That's how you get enough to play with. So.
All right. We certainly have enough to get started.
Yeah.
Next up is a card we also no longer do anymore. Circle of Protection White.
Ah.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things is Alpha, they accidentally left off Circle of Protection Black from Alpha. Beta had 2 cards that were left out. In fact, Beta has 7 cards that were not in Alpha.
Really?
Yeah, so it had Circle Protection Black, it had Volcanic Island, and in order to have a solicitation that said there were over 300 unique cards, they added an extra basic land, a picture for each of the basic lands.
Okay.
So there was one new picture of basic land that shows up. So.
Awesome.
Next up is an oldie. I don't know that I'd call it a goodie, but Scath Zombies.
This is an
Scathe
oldie.
Zombies, yeah.
Scath Zombies.
Yeah, the funny thing about Scathe Zombies is forever we were not wanting to make 2 mana 2/2, and that like this card it took us till I think Innistrad to finally go, okay, we're just going to do it. We're going to make a 2
It's
mana
fine.
2/2.
We're just going to do
So.
it. Yep. Next up, we have Anton Maddox was one of the early greats for art in Magic, and he did this red card that is
Oh yeah, this is
Orcish
cool.
Artillery.
So here's the trivia on this card. This card was misprinted in Alpha. It was different on Alpha than it is in Beta. So, okay, audience, what was the difference between this card and the Alpha version? We'll give you a second, see if people can name it. And the answer is, it had a different cost.
Really?
The Alpha cost was 1 in a red. Not 1 red, but 1 in a red. Just 2 mana. They got it?
They got it.
All right.
Smart chat. Smart
All
chat
right.
today.
We've got 3 more cards left.
Okay.
All right. Next up, another card that set a nickname for an ability.
Yep.
So we have Lure.
Ah, yes.
So Lure forces all creatures that are able to block the creature it enchants. We ended up putting this on a lot of creatures. We still do it every once in a while.
We don't do it as much. No, now we tend to do targeted stuff, like target creature must block me, or I must be blocked by a creature.
Yeah.
We actually don't do all that much of a lure ability because it's actually pretty strong, and limited. It's quite devastating.
Yep.
The interesting thing about this is if you go back to the very first, back in 4th edition, I think we put our first book out, and we had a thing about card combos. And one of the card combos included Lure.
Yeah.
Okay, audience, what was the classic card combo with Lure? They should get this one. It was Thicket Basilisk.
I was going to say it was Thicket
Basilisk, yep.
Basilisk, yeah.
So.
Oh, I remember that. That was a crazy combo.
All right, for added excitement, our 4th basic land.
All right.
Oh!
We're going to go for the
Swamp.
full 5?
Swamp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Messing up.
We
What are you
almost
doing?
have the full run here. We have
Yeah.
plains, island, mountain, swamp.
So, all right, on our last card, we did not get the full run.
Okay.
The last
Well,
card
by the
is
way,
not...
there is no forest on the rare sheet.
Oh, okay.
Only the island's the only basic land on the rare sheet.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
We did get a land.
Okay.
Okay.
It does make green mana.
Oh.
So that is
Oh
a
my.
Savannah.
This is a beta Savannah.
That's a nice pull.
I
It
like
is,
that.
yeah.
That is very playable. That's extremely playable.
Okay, so it wasn't Savannah, but one of the, in Unlimited, we changed the art on one of the basic land, one of the dual lands.
Oh,
Which
right.
dual land changes art?
I think it was Tropical Island.
Nope.
Volcanic Island.
Nope.
Wasn't that okay? Then
Nope.
I don't know.
Audience, does the audience know?
Plateau.
Plateau is correct.
Oh,
It is Plateau.
Plateau.
So what happened was the original file got corrupted on the computer, and they didn't have it.
Oh, wow.
And so they ended up using a piece that somebody else had done for Ice Age, I think.
Okay.
The art that's on Plateau in Limited was originally scheduled for Ice Age.
Okay.
And it ended up being put there. So.
All right. So that is the pack.
Wow.
You can experience something like this at Grand Prix Las Vegas. These particular cards we are donating to Child's Play Charity, which is a wonderful charity that helps children.
Yep.
Accurately enough. So that is our show for this week.
Hopefully you had a good time.
We have a lot of exciting things coming up on Weekly MTG. So next week we have Bill Rose and Charlie Catino.
Some old timers.
Yeah, who are the old timers. So we're gonna come
Bill
back.
started 3 weeks before me.
And he beat you. So I have 3 of the longest serving.
Yeah.
And then Charlie, of course, was part of Richard's original playtest group.
So was Bill.
Yeah, and so was Bill.
In fact, Bill and Charlie were both part of, they met Richard through the Bridge Club. They played Bridge together.
Yep.
And they were both on the design team for what was originally called Menagerie.
Yes.
But you guys would know as Mirage.
Yep.
So Mirage and Visions was designed by Bill and Charlie and the
Excellent.
whole team.
So yeah, we'll be talking to them about a lot of memories of Magic and 25 years in advance of the Grand Prix. After that, we're hitting M19 previews. So for anyone who doesn't know, we're going to have a smattering of M19 previews next week and at Grand Prix Las Vegas.
Cool stuff.
Even more stuff that you can see at GP Vegas.
Yep. And then the following Monday is when previews start as we know them. Your column will kick it off with some exciting
Some
M19
previews.
Some previews.
Yeah, we've seen some of the previews that
I got
everybody's
2
going to get.
previews in my article. I have a reprint and 1 new card.
Yep. Yep. And they're both very exciting.
Yep.
And so that week, the show, we will invite on Ethan Fleischer and Melissa DeTora.
Yep.
And we will talk through the set. We'll preview some new cards right here
Which
on
means
screen.
flash forward 5 years, Ari will be here talking about it.
Potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
The week after that is Alayna Danner and James Wyatt. So we're going to talk flavor, we're going to talk art, mostly centering on M19.
Yeah, if you like going behind the scenes on some of the creative stuff, that's an
Yep.
episode that you're not going to want to miss.
The week after that is July 5th, and we will not have a show because nobody's in the office.
No, yeah, there was an
It's
American
the
holiday the day
Yep.
before. So.
Following that, we're going to talk drafting with Marshall Sutcliffe and Adam Prosack.
Hey, I've heard of those two.
Yeah, they know a thing or two about draft, especially
one or two
M19
things about Limited.
Yep, especially M19 draft. After that, we're going to have the entire franchise team on. So when Kate was mentioning Nick Kellman, so Nick Kellman, Jeremy Jarvis, and Daniel Ketchum make up the core of that franchise team, and they will all be on to talk about what the franchise team does, as well as some exciting upcoming projects.
Yeah, maybe a little bit about the future of what Magic's going to look like coming down the line.
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, be sure to check out CFB events for more information on Grand Prix Las Vegas, happening not this weekend, but the following weekend.
And make sure to keep an eye out for Mark's final Great Designer Search 3 article next week.
Yep.
And then look for some M19 previews starting next week and starting in full the week after that. Thanks to Mark. Thanks to Kate Elliott for joining us via the internet.
And congrats, Ari.
Congrats
Congrats,
Ari.
Ari.
And we will see you guys next week on Weekly MTG.
Take care.